Of Northern California, and I want to thank all of you for coming today. I couldn't be more delighted. I was afraid when I woke up today that the rain might keep some people away, but I should have known better given the incredible advocates that are in the room. So thank you. I hope that this weekend that you'll get some information that is new to you and useful to you and that you can take back to your communities. And I hope that you get inspired by some of the information that you learn and some of the connections you make. And I hope really, above all, that you get fired up so that we can start to make some changes in our state together. We all know that there are real profound changes that need to happen. Before I get started with introducing our keynote speaker, I wanted to just follow up a bit on what Abdi said this morning about the My ACLU campaign. Later this afternoon, if you're not signed up yet, make sure you stop by the booth there in the corner. It's behind the prison cell, so you can find it. And it's where you can sign up for the My ACLU campaign. As Abdi mentioned, this is our campaign that allows you to recruit new members to join the ACLU, which makes us stronger as an organization, but it also helps you help your community organization and help you with your education. We've got, for example, a group of students at Stanford, a spoken word club. They have already, through recruiting new ACLU members, earned almost $3,000 to support their student club. So please sign up. So the topic of our panel this afternoon really couldn't be more timely or more important. What we're going to do this afternoon is have a real conversation with you about the criminal justice system. And it's always seemed crazy to me to use the word justice when describing our system because it's anything but just, as we know. There are profound problems in our state and our country's criminal justice system. They're multifaceted, they're complex, they're deep. So much so that we could barely do more than scratch the surface of them, even if we spent the entire 3 days doing nothing more than focusing on criminal justice. What I want to do before introducing our keynote speaker, Jakada Imani, who's the executive director of Ella Baker, is to just make a few observations to you about the war on drugs and the role that it and other overly punitive and irrational policies have played in terms of feeding the mass incarceration system that we have here in California and in the country. So I don't know if you all know this, but it's estimated that in the U.S., we spend about $40 billion each year on the war on drugs. $40 billion. So we're spending this incredible amount of money, but despite this huge expenditure of resources, I think by any rational measure, the war on drugs has been a complete and abysmal failure, any way that you measure it. Drugs are cheaper to get than any time in the past. They're more pure. They're stronger than any time in the past. This has been, the war on drugs has been a complete nightmare. Really putting Jim Crow and slavery aside, although there are obvious parallels, it's hard to think of any other public policy in this country that has done such sustained damage to so many people for such a long period of time. The harm that it has done to individuals, to communities, to our educational system really is incalculable. It's just shocking, actually shocking. One of the things that you all should know is that, the drug war hasn't really been a war on drugs so much as it's been a war on people of color, a war on families, a war on sound criminal justice policy. As I mentioned before, I think a war on our education system, given the diversion of resources that happens. It hasn't been a war on drugs, it's been a war on all these other things. Between the mid-1980s, which is when the war on drugs really started to ramp up, in 2007, the U.S. prison population just skyrocketed. It's estimated that because of the war on drugs and other policies like mandatory minimums and things like the 3 strikes law here in California, that our national prison population tripled, okay? Since the mid-1980s to 2007, our national prison population tripled. What does this mean? It means that despite the population differences, that the U.S. currently leads the world in incarcerating people. We incarcerate more people than China. You all know how many more people China has than the United States. So the U.S. incarcerates more people every year than China, and California leads the U.S. in terms of locking people up. Not a record that we should be proud of, and one that we all I think, have to have a moral imperative in our own lives to do something to change this. And one of the things that's most alarming about this is that the people that are getting locked up, for the most part, are not the people that the general public may think. Our prisons are not reserved for violent criminals. The vast majority of people who are locked up are nonviolent drug offenders, many of them first-time offenders. These are the people that are filling the prison cells like the one that you see back there. Something has got to change. Now, before I turn things over to Jakada, who I know will have a lot more to say about this topic, I wanted to share with you a couple of statistics that I think are lesser known. Today in the United States, blacks in the U.S. are incarcerated at 5 times the rate that blacks in South Africa during apartheid were incarcerated. 5 times the rates. And when we step back and actually look at the San Francisco Bay Area, the rates are even more alarming. In San Francisco, we're incarcerated, African Americans were incarcerated at 10 times the rates that blacks were incarcerated during apartheid South Africa. This is today, this is happening right now. Another statistic I want to share with you is about sort of the economy of mass incarceration. Right now it's estimated that there are about 2 million people who are employed in some way in the prison system. They get jobs through the system. Let's contrast that with the number of people who work in other sectors. There are only about 1.7 million people who are employed in higher education in our country. So we've got more people employed through the system of locking people up. And if we look at the number of people who are employed in public welfare positions, the rates just plummet. We only got about 650,000 people employed in public welfare positions. Pretty shocking comparisons. As I said before, clearly we have a crisis on our hands. Now, a lot of people wonder, why has the system spiraled so far out of control? There are a lot of reasons, but I think one of the big reasons, I mentioned the mandatory minimums, I mentioned the war on drugs, I mentioned policies like 3 strikes, but one of the big reasons is political cowardice. You know, all of our politicians, regardless of party, are afraid to be called soft on crime. But what all of us in this room have to do is we have to make people understand that being smart on crime isn't the same thing as being soft on crime. They're totally different things. People have got to understand that. You know, study after study has shown that what makes sense for people who use drugs is not locking them up, but it's treatment and rehabilitation. It's less costly than locking them up. It's much more effective. We've got to make sure that this is the direction that our public policy goes. What about property crimes? What makes sense is restitution, right? Not putting someone in a cage. This is what I mean about being smart on crime, not soft on crime. You know, one thing's for sure, the current policies aren't working. They aren't making any of us any safer, no communities any safer at all. But they are wreaking havoc on communities, particularly communities of color. They're bankrupting our school system, bankrupting our other social services. You know, this is why this is such an important topic for the ACLU, and one that we hope that you all will passionately lobby on Monday when we go over to our Capitol visits. Jakada is going to have some wise words to share with us on this topic, and we're really, really lucky to have him here this afternoon. Jakada Amani is the executive director of the Ella Baker Center in Oakland, and Jakada is an incredible advocate for social justice. And it's wonderful that he's at Ella Baker Center. Ella Baker Center is a really important partner for the ACLU because they get this stuff at a really core level. They understand that what makes communities safe isn't the number of prisons or jails that we have in communities, but it's the number of excellent schools that we have. It's, you know, how clean the environment is. It's the number of opportunities that there are for young people and for working people. That's what makes communities safer. Ella Baker understands that, and they work on a variety of campaigns to make sure that those things happen. Jakada is the executive director now, but before he became the executive director, he led a number of Ella Baker's most successful and exciting campaigns, including their Books Not Bars program, which works to end incarceration of youth in our state and instead focus on things that work in terms of making, you know, productive opportunities for young people in our state. He also did a lot of time working to make sure that Alameda County didn't build a massive, unnecessary, expensive youth prison in Alameda County. Ella Baker successfully stopped the county from going down that road. So we're really, really lucky to have Jakota here today. He's an Oakland resident, born and raised there, and the proud father of 4 very powerful, creative daughters, and we couldn't be more delighted to have you here, Jakota. Please join me in welcoming him. We are lucky to have Jakota here, and we'll make sure and leave some time for questions after his remarks this afternoon.